Starting us off today is Thomas Bushnell from Google.
So I just have to start off by saying precise rocks. And at home, the delta for me was moving from oniric to precise, and it rocks. And at work, moving from lucid to precise. If you don't run LTS, you have no idea. So I'm going to start off by talking about what my team does, which is the Ubuntu team, and then I'm also going to spend some time talking about some of the broader engineering principles that underscore what we do at Google around these kinds of problems. When I talk about those engineering principles, I don't want you to have the idea that my team follows them perfectly. It's a work in progress. And doing those principles with Ubuntu and that kind of challenge is harder than a lot of what we do. And so a lot of it's a work in progress. So we have a challenging user population. We have tens of thousands of people. That does not make us by any means the largest Ubuntu installation, but it makes us big. And an incredibly diverse group. Graphic designers, managers, software engineers, system engineers, translators, and it goes on. The cook in my office uses Kubuntu. So we have people who wrote the original Unix, Ken Thompson, people who don't know what Unix is, some of the best programmers in the world, and people for whom programming is a scary, scary thing. Sometimes we push workstations to their limits. We have users who want to open hundreds of Chrome tabs. Yeah. We have users who really, really love Emacs and users who really, really hate Emacs. And we probably have users whose preferred editor for code is gedit. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me. And work with we work with some very, very large code bases, including the main Google code base, which is huge, and the code bases for projects like Android or Chrome, and users who need to build and compile those tools, and they're using Ubuntu to do it. Our users have very rapidly moving development cycles, and we can't coordinate with them. There are too many of them. They all have a cadence of their own choice, but it isn't ours. So we have to always be available. We can't tell them this is update week. And the cost-benefit ratios sometimes are surprising to most operating systems folks who are focused on the consumer experience. A reboot costs $1 million because that's tens of thousands of workstations which pull an engineer off for 15 minutes. So that's $1 million. Logging out is only half that. In addition, we have custody of an awful lot of people's data. Kubuntu does not store this data. That's all done by the production folks at Google, so it's a totally different set of systems. But you access them from your workstation on your desk, and so the security of our product is crucial to the security of users' data. Not just our own corporate secrets, but those of an awful lot of other people that we have to guard. And likewise, another unusual situation is one that even our own employees often are unaware of. It's that keeping on old hardware and not asking for a refresh to a new workstation is bad. We have to pay a support cost for every workstation type that somebody has at Google. So if there's 50 of some workstation still running, we have to bear a test load for that until they get rid of it. And you talk to an engineer and he says, well, I'm fine with the workstation I have. I don't need anything faster. I'm happy with my old one. You're costing us way more money than you're saving by not getting the fancy new one. So what is Ubuntu? In one way, it's just a redistribution of Ubuntu. It's a skin. It's our own version of Ubuntu, but it's not something you would care to run. We don't customize the UI and the like, so it's not like Mint. It's not like you get Google's idea of what the desktop should look like. In fact, my team would much prefer to just leave it at the default and not deal with it. Right? Ubuntu does a great job of making a desktop that works, and we don't want to spend time on it. But we do a lot of centralized administration. That's absolutely crucial. So we have Puppet servers, and we have our own app repositories, and we use those as the primary way to manage the workstations like anybody would. Like most large installations, we have a big giant LDAP database with all the users in it and their UIDs and what groups they're in and all of that sort of stuff. And we have better and better automated release testing of a test lab that runs automated tests that we can acquire some assurance of what happens before it gets pushed to everybody. And we have testing versions so that people who have opted into a testing track can run that. None of that is radical. Most of that is done in pretty much the ordinary ways that you'll find documented in dozens of Lisa papers over the years. We have some unusual demands that most large installation places don't have, and a good way to describe some of what that's about is the security environment that we're in. So how do we deal with it? Well, we ban packages. There's all kinds of packages in Ubuntu that we simply purge from the system whenever we see them. Because typically they phone home, we can't leak information about how many people are where. We can't send core dumps up. Who knows what's in the core dump? We can't use, Ubuntu 1. I love it at home, but we can't have all of our work information on Ubuntu 1. Oh yeah, Google Drive, sure, we can use that. And soon it will be on Linux, I'm told. Special in-house user authentication. We have our own security authentication mechanisms, and we need to support them. So we need PAM and all of those tools that you might have do them. And what we exactly do with them is nothing strikingly unusual, but nonetheless, they're our own custom security mechanisms that we use. We're really interested in network authentication in we're trying to roll out 82.11x across the entire network, using TPMs to store network credentials for laptops so that when the laptop is stolen or lost, the credential is secure. A lot of this is because we're a much more high-profile security target than a lot of places, in part because of our custody of users' data and in part because of the size of our operation. So other unusual demands, the engineering demands that's placed on the platform can be very high. We have an awesome build tools and engineering tools team, and they develop custom build systems and file systems that are used to make builds go better. We maintain an internal app repository framework that's kind of a poor man's version of Launchpad. But it integrates with our security and build systems and all of those things. We have a very high cost for mistakes. If a reboot costs $1 million, something that breaks a whole bunch of users for an hour is even more. So it's worth spending a fair amount of time preventing those kinds of problems. Problems that most folks would just say, no data was lost, move on. We can't quite do that. We have very diverse developers that we support. It's not like a startup where everybody's using one thing. So our developers have very large perforce code bases with custom build systems. Android and Chrome are free software projects that use Git and standard build tools. And every kind of UI whininess you can imagine. One case where this is good, I gotta say, is there are some people who have decided that their solution to not liking Unity and not liking GNOME 3 and not liking anything is that they're going to use Xmonad. I don't care one way or the other about Xmonad, but now we got more people learning Haskell, and that makes them better engineers and nicer people to work with. So, I'm not saying I want them to start writing everything in Haskell, just that if they understand it, they'll probably write better code in Go or whatever else. So why do we use LTS? Why don't we want the latest hotness? We'd love it, but we can't afford it. Upgrading is very expensive. It's a 4-month project to roll out Precise to our fleet. Really more than that. We can't be doing that every 6 months. Hundreds of locally built packages, which we need to make sure work on the new release. And even if we don't make sure that every little detail works on the new release as we might, we certainly know that some percentage of them are going to have bugs. Stupid little niggling bugs, but there they are. And those bugs cause somebody's work to stop, right? So it becomes really important. Even small little changes can be expensive because we have to spend a fair amount of time testing and assuring them. Maintaining code forks is not something we can do terribly well. So we often have to tell users that if there's a little bug in the shell that isn't really causing a problem, we will certainly report it upstream, but we're not going to build a new package for it ourselves. Because there's a tremendous maintenance cost that comes associated with taking over maintenance of the package when we're not set up to do it. There are a lot of changes which are destabilizing and they don't have an obvious benefit for us. They may have a great benefit for somebody else, but we can't afford to bear the cost of tracking them all down every 6 months. And new UI, which is awesome for the consumer market, is not as exciting for our users. They usually cry that you moved their cheese and desperately seek to preserve the old UI. If I could still run X10, rather, I probably would. And so we are very cautious about adoption and phase-in. We will probably not deprecate Lucid until next year. We want to phase it out by the end of this year, but there will be stragglers. There will be a team that has some bug that they can't build their system on Precise because of some stupid issue in Python, say, and it will take them a while to be able to deal with, you know, some annoying incompatibility with Python 2.7, say, who knows. So there are things that we lose. So we have to use the LTS, but as a result, we do lose some things that we would love to have. So if you're in the position of deciding for a large group whether you want the LTS or not, know that you lose newer versions of important stuff. And one of the nice examples here is KDE. One of the greatest things we're going to have to move people to Precise is that all the KDE users will be extremely happy, because the KDE in Lucid was, for a KDE user, a nightmare. And a major giant improvements to KDE came out very shortly after Lucid. So all the KDE people know that it should be better for 18 months, and now they can finally have it. So you do end up behind on things that might matter a lot to you. And likewise, we can't participate as actively as we would like in most Ubuntu release cycles. Really active participation, perhaps even annoyingly at times, for Precise, and for the next, not much to say. And the one after that, a little bit, right? And then when we're up to S, we'll probably be really engaged, and with T, we'll be following every little detail. So the fun and the community involvement starts to follow a 2-year cycle instead of a 6-month one. So now I'm going to move to talk about some of the engineering practices that we use to deal with these tasks. The first is canaries. Canary refers, of course, to the old metaphor of the canary in the coal mine. And what this means is not what you might think it means. A lot of people think of what they think that means is having a population of testers and having some people test things in the real world before you run it. Canarying is more specific than that. Tester pools are special. They are users who have different usage patterns than the average user. They often tend to report the wrong bugs. They report bugs that they think somebody else will be bothered by because they're trying to be a good tester, not the bug that just stopped their work. They often spend time communicating with each other all the little workarounds and may not even be very good at reporting them as bugs at all. It's a strange little anti-pattern. So a canary is an automated push of changes to a small number of users, not on an opt-in basis. Or perhaps opting into canarying in general, but you don't get every new everything. So a change goes out to 1% or 0.1%, or whatever seems safe. And then if there's a problem, you need to be able to roll it back like that. And the advantage of doing it to small percentages as well is that you can form a Latin square of all of the different versions you want to test here and all the different versions you want to test there, and everybody gets to be in a little box so that you can also figure out which changes were really responsible for something falling apart. This is an extremely widely used strategy at Google. New search features are tried out in this kind of way. It's not that you don't test things first. Canarying is what you do after you're done testing. It's how you roll changes out. After you have decided that this has been tested, you now roll it out to a small percentage and watch really carefully. errors.ubuntu.org, is that the right site? Com is an awesome example of how to look for these kinds of problems, right? You become more willing to take beneficial risks when this happens because you know that you can back out the change quickly. You know that its impact is limited. So are you not confronted with this, have we tested it enough? The answer is never. You have never tested it enough to just roll it out to everybody. And there's less harm from buggy pushes because only a small percentage have gotten it, and as soon as you see the catastrophic bug, you back it out. And when you have less user disruption and you have more functional changes, everybody wins. You can move faster, and users have a more stable system. Second principle, automate yourself out of a job. This is a slogan at Google. Everyone in site reliability engineering's goal is to automate themselves out of a job. Don't worry, there'll be a new job for you, something that isn't yet automated. The human beings do not exist to turn cranks and push buttons on things which should be automated. So any kind of manual process where you have to go do it, I have to do these are the 5 steps to release a package, that should be automated. Certainly when you're dealing with emergencies or operational problems, you should not page a human whose job is to answer the page, look at a screen, push the button, and then go back to sleep. You should automate that procedure. If you know how to automatically respond to the page, you should do it. If there's some unusual condition that won't answer, you should be paging on that. But you don't want to get your number of pages down to 0, because then you're spending too much time automating, ironically. So there's some small number of 2 pages a day that is a reasonable amount for one beeper to handle. And then you have to have a corporate culture where reducing human involvement is richly rewarded, and people are rewarded for that, promoted for that, and the mark of their success is that they are out of that job and in to do one in an even more important and critical situation. An even more important motto, hope is not a strategy. Because computer systems fail. Hoping they won't is no good. All of them fail. So sitting there and engineering so that they don't fail is what programmers are trained to do, right? You think through all the corner cases, you make sure that your code is good, you test it adequately, and you never write your program assuming that it will fail. But computer systems are not just functions in C, and they do always fail. See? Yours too. The exceptionalism which says, I know that other people's computer systems fail, but I'm an awesome sysadmin, mine don't fail, is crazy. We all know it's crazy, but what we actually do in practice tends to be to think of the failure as an emergent or exceptional condition, which, yes, that happens, but they don't normally fail. That's what we say to ourselves. Hope is not a strategy, therefore. Hope, if you're using it as your strategy, is hoping that the emergency doesn't happen, rather than knowing that it will and being able to treat it as the ordinary course of business. So design for failure. System failure is not an exceptional event. It's expected. You should know how often your disk will fail, and know how many disks to have in the cabinet, and know how to plug them in without screaming and going, oh my God, the disk failed. Plan for failure of systems to be, boy, that's badly grammared, isn't it? That's like 3 passive voices or something in one phrase. You need to be able to handle failures in a non-emergent way and to plan for that. And you need to be able to have active monitoring so that you know quickly when things are failing. Waiting for a user to say, is this working? It seems to be down, should be regarded as a monumental failure in monitoring. Right. Finally, we have a culture that is about finding cause and not placing blame. And that's because programmers also fail. Make mistakes, screw up, kick the wrong chord. Years ago, when I worked at the University of New Mexico, my boss, who ran the computers for the CS lab, was standing next to a rack of disks. Each disk had a write protect button and maybe it was a power button or something. And he's sitting there, and we're having a conversation, and his fingers just start idly flipping the switch. He's flipping write protect on and off. And I'm like, Lee. We walk over to the console and we look at it, and we placed a bet about how fast the kernel would panic, because what's going to happen is it's going to get a paging failure pretty quickly on some page that was written out and now can't be read in because it failed. All programmers make mistakes. Your programmers make mistakes. If you have a culture which says throw out programmers that make mistakes, you might as well start, give up. You're not going to find a staff that doesn't make mistakes. So what do you do? We have an open culture around postmortems. That's probably the most important thing. Anyone can request a postmortem when something goes wrong. Anyone. So if my Gmail does something screwy, and I know there was some system failure, and I think the Gmail team is not treating it seriously, I can say, I'd like to see a postmortem on that. And the rule for saying, no, you don't have to write one when one has been requested is something like 2 directors or a vice president have to say, no, that's not necessary. So the setup is, if somebody says write a postmortem, you do it. And it's not about blaming somebody. It's about getting a timeline of exactly what happened and when. What safeguards would have prevented this from happening if only they had been in place? What monitoring rules should have been there and would have caught it before the system failed? Why was the page answered in 10 minutes when we expect it to be 5? Do we need to have another secondary? How can we organize that better? What would have made this less prone to fail? Not just what was the bug that caused the failure. Of course you want to know that. But because programmers make mistakes, there are other such bugs around, and you need to plan for them to start bringing down your service. So the rule is that you should never have the same failure twice. Do we always get there? Probably not, but that's the standard. So failure is okay, and now figure out a way to prevent that failure from ever recurring. Human error almost always produces a situation that's very similar to a system failure. So if you have adequate monitoring against the fact that computers fail, you also have pretty good monitoring against the fact that people make mistakes, and vice versa. Finally, I want to give some thanks to people. I want to thank our marvelous support staff. We have a support contract with Canonical, and I tell you, Etienne gets a lot of grief from us and is incredibly helpful. Canonical has some extraordinary developers on staff. Steve Longasek, Colin, Sebastian, Stefan, and Robert Ansel. There's just a huge list of people who have really, really gone out of their way to help us, knowing that that makes Precise better, and better for everyone. So it's an awesome model. We have to thank all the upstream developers who make all of this stuff that Debian and Ubuntu distribute, and everyone in Debian and Ubuntu who does the rather significant job of packaging, integrating, bug triaging, thinking about system design. And all my fellow Googlers without whom we couldn't possibly have anything awesome happening at the company. So, we're having a party tonight. It's at 7 o'clock, not 7:30. Over there, clowns, mini golf, food, beer, and fun. And finally, we also have a phone. So if you haven't signed up, this is your last opportunity to fill out the survey this afternoon, because we're going to have the drawing at the party. So, are there any questions? How much time do we have left? About 3 minutes. So time for only a little bit, and then you can ask any of the Googlers here if you have questions about what we do at Google. They can stand up for a moment, and then you can find them. There's some other people out here who are hiding, but...
Are you running Ubuntu server on any of your production machines?
No. We don't use Ubuntu on our production machines.
What are you using?
I can't really talk about them.
Do you have the tests that you run in a public repository, such that somebody else could run them maybe before release?
Right now we have a bunch of Autotests. We use Autotest. Most of the tests are probably specific to our infrastructure and don't make any sense out of it. Some of them might not. And I think we're right now in the middle of a whole revamping of that infrastructure, and when it's done, I think we're going to take the Autotest improvements that we've made and see what we can fold back into the public Autotest, and then also the tests that make any sense outside of our environment, we would also want to do that with.
Do you upgrade every 2 years because that's the time between LTSs?
Yeah.
Or are you happy with that span of time between LTSs? Would you like it to be different?
I don't know. I think 2 years is good. We don't want to wait too much longer than that, and we couldn't possibly manage faster than that.
Last one.
What one single thing would you change about Ubuntu?
But it's perfect. It's precise. It's hard to know. It's hard to know off the cuff. What one single thing would I change about Ubuntu? No. No. I don't have an answer. I don't have an answer. Good.
I'm one of the Kubuntu Council members. My name is David Wonderly. Over the last several months, I'm sure a lot of you have noticed on blogs and everything else, possible changes to Kubuntu. And after a series of meetings today, we are still the official flavor for KDE on Ubuntu, and we're not changing anything as far as we can tell right now. Just wanted to introduce, yeah, big relief. We're real happy to continue to push KDE with Ubuntu. And the other thing that this release that we brought up was a tablet platform built specifically for tablets with Kubuntu Active. It's built from Plasma Active from upstream KDE, and it's a tech preview this time around. It's available through ISOs, but it will be on OMAP 4 and the Tegra 2 ARM boards. And just wanted to, little screenshots here of the welcome screen, as well as on-screen keyboard and creating things. It's something that we all feel very strongly about and we're very excited to bring to the table. And the other thing that we also have is a mobile platform that's also available to preview. I know it runs on the Nokia N900 very well. And that's also available for OMAP 3 and OMAP 4. But just running the newest, latest, and greatest KDE on Ubuntu, and that's about all I have. But I just want to bring it up and say thank you guys for all the support that I've received throughout this whole transition over the last couple months. It's been real fun, real exciting. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, next to talk about XUbuntu is Elizabeth Krombach.
So I'm the web and marketing lead for XUbuntu. I wanted to say we're a really tiny community right now, and I'm the marketing lead because I know how to use Twitter. So we could always use more contributors. So one of the things we're trying to do this cycle is reach out more to the community, particularly our users. We set up a Twitter account this past cycle. We found someone who was already running a feed for Google+, and brought him into the project. We're also trying to improve communication between developers from Ubuntu itself to XUbuntu, and also other packagers of XFCE. On that subject, we're actually switching to 4.10 XFCE version of the next release. We've been on 4.8 for quite some time, but 4.10 didn't come out in time for the LTS. We also have a massive strategy document that we wrote about 4 years ago that covers everything from community structure to development and testing and all kinds of things, but we haven't really touched it in all those 4 years, so we're going to try to rewrite that in the next cycle. We also need to do a lot of improvements to our documentation because that hasn't been updated lately. And as we do with every cycle, we're going to take a close look at all our default applications and make changes as needed. And then finally, just continue polishing user experience. One of the things that's on our roadmap is to improve all our QA stuff. So we're going to do a thorough review of all our ISO testing and everything, and see if we can reach out to the community for more of that. And also things like our login screen. It's not very pretty right now, so we're going to try to improve on that. And that's pretty much all I had.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Next up is Julian Laverne to talk about Lubuntu.
Hi. So as is, Lubuntu is a young flavor, I will do a quick presentation. So a little bit history. The first proof of concept of Ubuntu was for 9.10. The first version was 10.4, and the first version of Ubuntu as an official flavor was 11.10. We have two goals of making Lubuntu. The first is to make a flavor using LXD, but our main goal is to do a flavor of Ubuntu, especially designed for low-spec hardware, optimizer for low spec, and something you can install and use on a very old computer. For example, I'm working on Lubuntu during 4 UDS on EPC 701, and it's just working very nicely. I do all my work on this, and it's working very nice. So we are using LXD, which is a desktop environment using GTK and some independent modules. We also using other applications to complete the desktop, such like Chromium for the browser, OpenBox for the Windows Manager, and some XFCE component. For 12.04, we had our own software center optimized for low-spec hardware. We also now use LightDM, like many other flavors. And we have a new artwork for this release. And for the next cycle, we expect to include a new session manager to have a better control of application we use and better integration between applications. And we will discuss probably some replacement for application by default, such as the image viewer and the notification utility. Okay. And forget to write that we also have a IRC channel and a mailing list if you have questions and if you want to talk with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Next up to talk about Ubuntu Studio is Scott Lavender.
How's everybody doing today? All right. Hopefully Allison is here. I wanted to say hi and have a special message from Charlie TCA, who also said hi. Okay. Let's see. Where's the clicker here? All right. That's what we're talking about. Who here is really familiar with Ubuntu Studio? Raise your hand. Okay. Better than I thought. We get that question a lot, and the general answer, if it's somebody in the forums or otherwise, it's the first bullet point. That's just different packages. It's different settings and some artwork, right? Well, I disagree. I think basically it's a platform for content creation. And that's really where we're trying to push it. The operating system should be transparent completely, in toto. We're not selling an operating system. What we're selling is a way to create digital content. So what we need to do is provide tool chains that should be comprehensive, complete, and robust. And it should be simple and intuitive, which unfortunately it really hasn't been until starting to get now. One of the things we had for 1204 was we switched to a live DVD. That's something our users have been asking for quite a while, which means we now have the GUI installation instead of the old text base. Another major feat was getting the low latency kernel put into the repos and used as default on Studio images. We've also been better engaging the graphical, video, and photography tasks. Historically, Ubuntu Studio has been kind of focused on audio. We began our first implementation of workflows, which I'll discuss in a minute. And there's a whole host of other changes: desktop environment, themes, art, fonts, etc. And I will say that development both increased quantitatively and qualitatively in 1204, so I feel very good about that. What is a workflow? This is kind of the thought process we used to redefine what we were putting into Ubuntu Studio. It's a defined process and the preferred applications that users accomplish their task. Now, what does that mean? That means I ask myself, what does a user want to do? Luckily, I'm a user of Ubuntu Studio, so that was easy. The point is that we said, hey, they want to do this, how can we support them? And we found that what we thought were the best applications, the best tool chain to support them and get their task completed. So we need to make sure our tool chains are functional, coherent, and complete, that Ubuntu Studio is not just a library of applications, which sometimes it threatened to become. This provides the foundation for user documentation, and it has the added benefit that it defines the overall process, which is important for new users. which is important to us. So in the short term, what we're going to be working on, continuing our work on workflows. We're also going to engage the community more often. I admit I'm not very good at publishing to Twitter and Facebook and emails and such, but I promise I'll try to do better. User documentation probably needs to be done completely, just redone. We're going to start we're going to start documenting some of our developer process. We're also going to be documenting our testing procedures and developing hopefully better ones. We're moving toward a Ubiquity plugin that would allow users to selectively install the workflows or tasks that they want to get done, the tool chain to support that. So that means you don't have to install all the graphical or the video or the photography or what have you if all you want to do is record audio. So that's kind of a nice one. And we'll be increasing the teams we have. I wish we could also increase the team members to help do this, but we'll see about that. And this will help guarantee better user experience for our users there. Now the long term, we still have to work on workflows. That'll be a never-ending process probably, along with documentation and backports. I'd like to also start including some tutorial videos, not only on YouTube and elsewhere, but possibly even included on our DVD image. We have the room for it. It'd be nice to have for new users some way to go ahead and quickly see what's going on. Well, the whole user experience needs to be looked at. How can we automate things and make it more transparent for our users? And we need to engage our experienced users and see how we can better support them. Lastly, we'll be looking for new users. So we got to explore where they're at, research what they want, and how we can support them. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
All right, and to finish us off with Edubuntu, we have Jonathan Carter. Do you want this too?
Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone. So, Edubuntu. Well, precision and reliability are two things that's really important in Ubuntu, but we take it to the extreme. It's a religion for us, those two words, to the point where every release we just cut off work that we know we do and we deliver it on time, and we're like the release teacher's pet in some ways because of that. The only problem is that one thing that one of our previous leaders pointed out, Jordan Mantha, he said, if we don't do big and exciting things, we're not going to attract new contributors. And he's right, because that's what we've been doing the last 4 years, and it's still the same 2 or 3 people doing all the work. So we want to change that. But yeah, we want to do the big, hairy, audacious things, but we're too scared to do them, and we don't want to have so much work that we can't actually do the work items that we've put on our that we've got during UDS, which sometimes happens. So 12.10. 12.10, we're not going to do. Edubuntu is still going to be the same usual old Edubuntu. We don't want to do too risky things. We are taking up some more stuff than usual, but there are things that we think we can do and achieve in 12.10. We're discussing this on 10 a.m. on Friday morning. So it will still be the same old Edubuntu that people have come to know and love. But we want to get people to get excited and make things with Edubuntu, and people to build their products on it. And we're really excited about everything in Edubuntu and want other people to feel the same. So how can we make people excited and still keep things stable? So we're going to follow the Google Labs kind of ideas and have something called Edubuntu Labs, or maybe it will be called something else, where people can experiment and sandbox more, and if users want to try it out, they can and give feedback. And maybe by the next LTS, we can have it ready as production features. And 2 of them that we're looking at, we want to revive the Edubuntu server product, which we abandoned a few years ago because it was just too much work. And the second one we want to look at is maybe an Edubuntu tablet, because there's just so much cool technologies and stuff happening at the moment. And yeah, if you want to get involved, do go look at this URL. There's some instructions for you. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a lot of slides, so I'm going to blast through this really quickly. This looks like a presentation about all this work that's been going into building the Ubuntu app development platform, but it's not really about the platform. There's been lots of wonderful work going on all over the place. This is more of a personal story about one idiot who's used that platform. That idiot's me. I'm not a good programmer. Some of you have read my code, and I can see people nodding right now. So I'm not a good programmer, but this story started out off a little while back when I went to there was like a lunchtime community manager meetup thing at Google. And I was sat there, and one of my buddies at Google just asked this question, how do you acknowledge contributions in the Ubuntu community? And this is something that we don't really have traditionally we've not really had a very formal way of solving this problem. We've basically relied on the goodwill of our community to say, hey, good work. Really appreciate what you did there. And UDS is a great example of how we do this. But we didn't really have a particularly effective way of doing this. So this started rattling around in my brain for a little while. At first I was thinking about giving people T-shirts or whatever it might be, but trying to make people feel good about how they participate. A little while later, this guy came and stayed at my house. Stuart Langridge, some of you know him as Ack. And we did this. We sat down for about 4.5 hours. We drank about 19 cups of tea. And then we started bouncing some ideas about how we could build some kind of accomplishment system around how people could feel good about their contributions, but also how these contributions could be discoverable, so you can discover things that you can do in Ubuntu. We always have this constant issue of there's never enough documentation, and if we do have documentation, sometimes it's out of date. So this was part of the problem. So we came up with some mock-ups, and this is basically how the system should look. This is what we thought could be a cool way of doing things. So the idea is that you have a bunch of different things that you can explore in the community. Write a unit test, file your first bug, land your first bazaar branch, write your first piece of documentation, translate something, go to a loco team event, whatever it might be. You can browse these things. You can then click on one of those things and find out information about how to do it. So this makes this content very discoverable. We can put things such as how to find help, links to interesting content online, things such as that. The idea was that the system should be automated, so little notify OSD bubbles will pop up to say, hey, you accomplished something cool. You filed your first bug, as an example. And then you'd be able to see a collection of these different accomplishments in like a trophy cabinet kind of view. But what was important to us as well was to make sure that this was neatly integrated into the desktop. There's been some awesome work going on into Unity and all the various other desktop components. So building, for example, a Unity Dash lens for this was important. So we started fleshing out these ideas, put them into a spec. Ack did his usual job of coming up with the ideas and asking someone else to do the work. It's funny because it's true. So anyway, we had some core aspects to this goal that were important to us. So first of all, not only community accomplishments, things such as filing your first bug, but also things on your computer were important. Like we could use the same system for sending your first email in Thunderbird or passing level 1 in World of Goo, or whatever it might be. So this is a great way of people learning how to use their computers. Wanted it to be decentralized. We can't build one single system that knows everything about everybody. We don't have the resources, and it wouldn't be the right thing to do. So wanted to find out a way in which we could build this in a more decentralized manner. To support multiple clients. So the idea is that we might have a GTK client, for example, but you might want it on your web, on the web or in KDE or somewhere else. Obviously, strong Ubuntu integration. We're here for Ubuntu, and Ubuntu is the target platform, but also useful for other projects as well. So this system was never designed for just the Ubuntu community or just Ubuntu-related content. GNOME, KDE, anything else is welcome. So we came up with this broad plan. I know it's a flowchart. Hanging there with me. Well, it's not really a flowchart. So at the bottom, we've got basically the clients. So the client helper is the graphical application that where you can view all your accomplishments, or the lens as an example. That will talk to a Python module, which in turn talks to a backend daemon. This is a service that's just constantly running, checking to see if you've accomplished things. The daemon, which uses dbus, is aware of the different types of accomplishments, but importantly, when you accomplish something in the community, we wanted to verify it so people can't fake them. Accomplishments on your computer, such as passing a level in a game, we can't really verify them, it's impossible. But we care about social accomplishments such as the ones in the community. But importantly, where it says client app, we wanted to be able to build support into applications so an application can say, hey, you accomplished this thing, which means that when in, for example, GNOME mines, if you pass a particular level, then it can trigger accomplishment to happen, so upstreams can participate as well. So we use dbus for that. Now remember, I'm not a good programmer. So this looks really scary, okay? So now I'm confronted with an interesting idea that the two of us came up with, but how am I going to build it? So started with this bit, which is the accomplishments. This is the how we define what something in the community on your computer is. And we'd already talked a bit about this in the spec, but you don't need to read the content on this slide, but this basically is how it looks. So you have a file, a .accomplishment file, which essentially has documentation and metadata about an accomplishment, and then you have a script, which is basically code that detects whether you've done something. So this can be either, for example, talking to Launchpad, or it can be checking a directory in your disk, or whatever it might be. So that was fairly straightforward. We could do that. I naturally wanted to start with the client side of things. I've written a few small applications, so this was more comfortable for me. So fortunately, we have Quickly. Kudos to the Quickly developers, by the way. Quickly is awesome. So within seconds, I could create an application. I had everything there. I could edit the code. I could edit my UI. Everything was neatly there. I could build packages and test it. But importantly, because I was writing, one of the things I love about Python is Python's a batteries-included language. And the Ubuntu archive has everything that I need in it. Many of the things that I needed, people who I know wrote, which is one of the cool things about being in the Ubuntu community. But not only the various things that I needed, such as signing, a good example is GPG signing, which James Henstridge wrote, but also tools that are in the software center that allow me to have a more pleasurable developer experience. So I discovered, at the recommendation of Mike, this app called Genie, as an example. And Genie's fantastic. Works for me, but there's lots of other options in the software center, and ratings and reviews let me discover those things. So I was already starting to have fun. I was making some progress. I was drinking lots of Coke, and I was going. This helped me take the mock-up and turn it into something that I could run. And almost immediately, I felt empowered using Ubuntu as a platform. Obviously, it doesn't look complete. It wasn't. This is a week's worth of work. So had something up and running. So I did what most people do and put it into a branch in Launchpad. And put it into my junk folder and blogged about it. Some people started contributing and taking a look and running it, saying, hey, I've got some cool ideas. And the community started getting a little bit interested. Now I got really scared. Really scared. So I started looking at the daemon. I've never written a daemon before. So I was looking at the various things I need to do in terms of building this. I'd never built a dbus service, never built a daemon before. And I was talking to Stuart again, and he made a recommendation that I use Twisted for a daemon. In his words, Twisted is witchcraft. It's incredibly cool what Twisted can do, this asynchronous platform. But it's pretty complicated to get started with. So I reached out to the community and said, look, I've never done this before. Can anyone help? And Duncan McGregor, who works at DreamHost, he's a buddy of mine. He used to work at Canonical. He said, I can help out. And some other people helped out, and they said, look, here's some of the things you want to do. JML helped make some recommendations. And the community, this is where I saw the community value of this. It's like people started saying, we can help, but we've got some expertise and some knowledge that you obviously don't. Here's some of the things that we can do. So this mystical witchcraft became suddenly more realistic. So then the next bit was the validation service. So the basic idea of this is that, when your computer, the decentralized approach is that when your computer detects that you've accomplished something, so let's say it checks with Launchpad that you've filed a bug, it creates a trophy file on your computer, and we want to put that on another machine that verifies that you've done that, and then GPG signs it, so it can't be faked. So that involves a server and some means of getting things to and from that server. And there's all kinds of complexity in terms of what happens when the server goes down, what happens when it crashes, how do we deal with locking, all those various complexities. To set a server up, that's not a problem. We've got Ubuntu server, but all of the details of how my front end and back end were going to, how the client and the server were going to interact was pretty complicated. So again, Stuart recommended Ubuntu One. Many of you will know of Ubuntu One as this service where you can do file synchronization and all the other different bits and pieces, but it's actually got a really nice API. So you can automatically accept shares, synchronize files, you can do all kinds of different things. And I managed to get Ubuntu One, again, not a programmer, managed to get Ubuntu One support built into the application in less than a day. It's a really nice API. So kudos to the Ubuntu One team. So now put these up on the, we had a semi-real project at this point. This was probably about 3 weeks in, and put up some branches and said, come and check it out and download it and see what you think. And a few brave souls went in there and discovered all these bugs that I hadn't seen. But this was really cool because people started helping out with translations. And a story that we don't tell very often in the Ubuntu community is the story of I enable my app for translations and then it's available in 11 languages an hour later, which seems to happen to a lot of people. So our translations community, thank you to all. So this is basically what we ended up with. A little over 3.5, 4 months later from the original discussion with 19 cups of tea, we now have an application that looks like this. It's a GUI app. It fits neatly into Ubuntu. All the design thinking has been done. I didn't have to figure out what color of orange I needed. The black toolbar. You can view the different things, the different opportunities that are available. You can click on one and you can find out information about it. Thanks to Brandon for the design of this information. All of this content and documentation here can be translated into any language, and our community has already contributed there. So this is a great way of delivering information to people. Little Notify OSD bubbles pop up to inform you of what's going on, the different things that you've accomplished that are verified using the Ubuntu One server. And thanks to David Kaye, we also have a neatly integrated lens that shows your accomplishments as well. So, in summary, I'm an idiot, and I can't program. But 4 months later, we could put out our very first release, Ubuntu Accomplishment 0.1. And it was all possible because of Ubuntu. Thank you.